Put my mic.
We're live, and I'm just going to give it less than a minute for people to join in.
You need some interlude music.
Elevator.
So we can start now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Be Waste Wise. I'm Shweta Dandapani, one of the community builders on Be Waste Wise. The topic for today's webinar is upskilling and reskilling for a circular economy. We have Adam Reed, Chief Sustainability and External Affairs Officer at Suez Recycling, who is moderating the webinar. And Adam has done other webinars on green skills at large. Please go to his profile on our website, wastewise.be, and you'll find the other webinars. Adam has gotten together two other speakers. We have Ian Williams, Professor of Applied Environmental Science at University of Southampton in UK, and Charlotte Davis, who's a Senior Consultant of Resource Efficiency and Circularity at Beyondly. A reminder to all of you who attend the webinar before, Adam and the panel will take questions. Please direct your questions to Q&A. And use chat to introduce yourselves, or if you want to add any comment, you want to add any latest research you've seen that you think will be interesting for all the attendees, please use chat for that. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Shweta. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on A, where you are, and B, whether you're listening live or listening in later. It's a real pleasure to be back for what seems to be, I don't know, number 15 or 20 on the list that I've done with you now, Shweta. I always enjoy these sessions because the audience is so different from many of the other industry events that I host. So I'm looking forward to some obscure questions and some difficult questions from the audience wherever you're based today. So welcome. Two great panelists. So I'll let Ian and Charlotte introduce themselves in a moment. It might look a little bit like an all white, all Northern Hemisphere kind of agenda, but I can guarantee you it's not, because between us we've got some interesting overseas experience and we're happy to talk about global issues. It's just we've got a panel today that's involved heavily on what's going on in the UK at the moment, which I think is a really interesting transition market for green skills, net zero, circular economy, and a whole host of other acronyms that you can play bingo with as this session progresses. So introductions. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for Suez, the global waste and resource management company, and for my sins, I was a former president of the Chartered Institution of Waste Management, which you will hear more from Charlotte about later. But during my presidential year, green skills, or skills necessary to underpin a transition to net zero and the circular economy, were a big theme for me as we engaged both UK and European governments on how do we get the right skills in the right place at the right time. And that's hard to do if you don't know what you're going to be 10 or 15 years from now as a sector. And it certainly doesn't help if you don't know how you then get there. So what's the route map look like? Which organizations have to be involved? How do you create the right courses or the right experiences? Who's got the skills to deliver that, and therefore make sure that the workforce of tomorrow has been upskilled, reskilled, retrained, or has opened up career pathways for those that have just come through education. So hopefully my two panelists today will be able to share their experiences a little bit on that. Now, before we start, I just want to throw some live data, just come off the print from last week. We did a survey of 1,000 young people and 1,000 not so young people, and got some interesting results. So here, I'm just going to throw these results out there, and then we're going to get Ian and Charlotte to introduce themselves and then to reflect on the data. So 44% of young people aged 16 to 18 in the UK didn't know why the UK was prioritising net zero and decarbonisation. Worrying fact. Here, try this one. Only 18% of those 16 to 18-year-olds would prioritise a job that benefits the environment, while 72% cited a good salary as being the primary driver for their job or next job. 41% of young people said they lacked opportunity to follow green careers in their local area, even if they wanted to. I'm not sure what those barriers might be, but we'll come back to that in a moment. And only 17% of that same group felt that AI and technical skills could be considered sustainable in a new green economy, which again, I think is slightly worrying. So I think there's quite a disjunct or a disconnect between what the youth of today in the UK, at least, think the future might be, and how we, as those specialising in the sector, might map that future. So that is a theme I want to address. But anyway, that's enough from me. Ian, welcome, Professor Ian Williams. How are you, sir? We've known each other far too long.
Well, we shouldn't tell the audience how long we've known each other because that will date us tremendously. Well, it's nice to see you again, Adam. And for those of you who have never seen Adam chair these meetings, he does such a good job at it. He's so convivial and friendly that it'll be a fun hour as well as an interesting hour. So it's great to see you, sir.
So that's a pleasure, mate. It's a pleasure. And if you're going to be that nice to me, we might be here for two. So listen, you've spent pretty much your entire career in academia, preparing, bright young things with PhDs and masters and all sorts of other undergraduate qualifications relevant to waste, resources, and the environment more generally. So tell us a little bit about that and how you're preparing the workforce for tomorrow. And then I'll probably the exam question for you from me is, and are government, academia, and industry aligned? Are you getting the right messages? Do you know what's needed?
Well, thank you, Adam. That's a big set of questions. So I've, as you can tell by the state of me, I've been around the block a bit. I started out as an academic professional in the 1980s, but I did work for an American oil company for a year first, which might surprise you, Adam. And I have spent 6 years at the University of Southampton being in charge of our small business portfolio. Which is 15 million a year turnover and so on. So I have got a bit of experience of running businesses as well as being an academic. I specialised in air pollution, water pollution, both types, fresh and marine, and sustainable resource management. And I suppose I'm best known for sustainable resource management. I really enjoy working with young people. And they give you fresh ideas, enthusiasm, new perspectives. They can drive you around the twist as well. Occasionally they need a size 7 boot up the backside to get them moving and that sort of thing. But that's part of the job that I've become used to. One of the interesting challenges about being an academic at the moment is that the waste industry used to be, I think, more closely tied to academia than it is now. And Adam, I think you would probably agree with that. If you go back maybe 20 years, there was considerable interaction between the academics involved in research, the waste industry, the professional bodies, and actually the government civil servants who were involved in it. And we often mixed together at events and shared an occasional cup of coffee where we shared ideas. And it was a very useful mixing pot, if I can put it crudely, where ideas got shared. Now, that has been eroded a lot. And I think that has made a really big difference to the quality of what's happening in terms of policy, strategy, regulation in the waste sector. I really think that we need to go back to where we were. I hate to sound like an old fogey that says it was better in the past, but on this particular topic, I am going to sound like that because we have lost that connectivity and we do need to get it back. The reason it matters is that politics has become so bipolar now that you've literally got the left and the right and very little in the middle. And it's in the middle where you get the discussions and the movement. When political ideology drives science, you're in trouble, okay? And science and engineering is a fundamental part of what we do in the waste and resources sector. I mean, it involves social scientists as well, of course. It involves all types of disciplines. But without that connectivity, that willingness to listen, and with political ideology dominating, we're in trouble. And that means we need to, as a sector, embrace talking and communicating more, which of course is what we're doing today.
Very good. You've picked a couple of really interesting points there. One, you and I, we've seen each other on beaches. We've played football with, Environment Agency senior staff and civil servants on Sardinia being a great international venue where we've presented research and talked about big European policy initiatives back in the day. I mean, are those events still alive and kicking, or are they struggling to get that full mix of audience?
So the academic conferences that you're talking about are still alive and kicking, but they are really struggling to get industry to come and attend, right? And that I kind of understand that. They're expensive for a start. They're international, which adds to the cost. And so they're difficult to justify on a budget line for a private sector business or even a local authority. But they are invaluable because that personal connectivity that you get is enormous. I think there is one other thing that I would just like to say in answer to that is that if I go back to the old CIWM events that used to be held in Torquay and Torbay, right? They were wonderful events, the exhibition and whatever. Now, they got moved from Torbay for obvious reasons. It's a difficult place to get to. But they were a wonderful place where everybody in the sector mixed. The bin operatives were there, the marketing people, the finance people. I mean, absolutely everybody involved in the sector was there. And we all went out for a beer or a coffee at some point, and we all got to know each other as people. And this is a people business, right? It's a people business.
Yep.
So that has been lost a little bit by I would call it the kind of corporatization of the sector. And actually, if we could just tone down the corporatization and move up the involvement of all players in the sector at these events, I think it would help enormously.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so you've set the scene. You've already challenged Charlotte a little bit. You know, she got a kick up the backside was a reference. Were you like that as a university student, Charlotte? Needed a nudge?
Yeah, probably.
Charlotte, welcome. Now, tell us who you are, tell us who you work for, and then tell me a little bit about what being CIWM Young President was all about.
So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks, David, Adam, for that introduction. So yeah, I am a senior consultant in resource efficiency and circularity at Beyondly. We're a small consultancy compliance scheme based in North Yorkshire. So we do all sorts of help around packaging waste, electronic, batteries, but then my sort of side is working with our members in that area to, I guess, streamline packaging products, reduce the impact of regulations such as EPR on their businesses. So yeah, quite a dynamic, fast-paced, changing area of the sector to be in. And I totally fell into it. I didn't have any knowledge of waste and resources at university. I just assumed the waste got collected, and I think it was through that passion for the environment that I kind of fell in, and then I've kind of got here and realised our importance in combating climate change, and also that transition to the circular economy, and that passion's kind of grown. I've only been in the sector 4 years, but I've absolutely loved my time so far. And then my other hat, which Adam's also referenced, is I'm currently the Early Careers President for the Chartered Institution of Waste Management. So for those of you that haven't heard much about CIWM, you were probably in the same boat as me a year and a half ago. I had no clue it really existed, or I knew it was there and I wanted to become a member, but you know, when you're doing client work or studying, it's always sort of at the bottom of that list. But the CIWM for me has been a massive door opener, I guess, to the sector. It standardises the professionalism around waste management, so there's lots of training. It's a massive community. I've met so many professionals across the sector. Perhaps I'm a bit blinkered in my area, maybe working with businesses, so it's been really helpful to work, again, like Ian says, with that collaboration across, you know, academic institutions, local authorities, non-for-profit organisations across that area. So that's one massive thing. And then another thing I've really gained out of it is mentoring. So through my role, but also just being a member, I have access to mentoring. So it's been a massive, I guess, opportunity, but also I've gained so much from it as well. So if you're not a member, definitely have a look into CIWM. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thank you. And just before I'm going to ask you another question related to my stats in a moment. But if you're not in the UK, then there are other professional bodies that do things like CIWM in geographies somewhere near you. And if you're not involved with ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, which is kind of a mothership organisation looking at waste management progress on all continents, then have a look, because they've got their own mentoring platform as well. So we'll come back to mentoring in a minute, I'm sure, because I think we've all probably got some experiences to share. So interesting, Charlotte. So you and I do work quite closely together, so I'm not going to embarrass you, but 83% of 16 to 18-year-olds predicted that green skills will be more important 3 years from now than they are today. Yet only 32% said that their education to date had prepared them for those skills. Is that a problem, and how do we correct it?
It's a massive problem, and I think so. My entry into the sector was just very much those baseline skills I perhaps got from university in terms of data analysis, perhaps critical thinking, that kind of thing that I applied. But in my job that I've progressed into, I've sort of experienced those key skills that you need within a circular economy or circular economy thinking. And a lot of that stuff you don't get taught at school. You don't, from my experience or the degree I did, I learned through that. So I think it's massive. And I was at a conference last week, the week before, HR in waste and recycling, and I think somebody said that 65% of school-aged children today will end up in jobs that currently don't exist. So how on earth do we build that skills training for those sort of jobs that we don't even know what they're going to be or where they're going to pop up in? And I think for our sector, it's such a diverse, there's so many different jobs, and whether you have a background in marketing, IT, engineering, there is something for you. So it's how we build an entry, pull in from across those different areas. We're not just looking at environmental services anymore. It's beyond that. It's massive. And we know as well with the circular economy, it's not just us in resources and waste. It's everything. It's green spaces, it's transport, it's construction and buildings. So it's how do we collaborate across those sectors as well to drive. So it's I think what you've just said there is a massive challenge for us to tackle, and it's how we do that, really, isn't it? And that sort of practical next steps. But I'm not sure I have the sole answer for that, but I think we can sort of talk today how we're going to be able to, I guess, progress towards building that skill set and baseline for what we will need.
It's either daunting or really exciting, and I'm not sure which one.
Massive opportunity, I think.
Good answer. Whereas Ian and I would go, oh, sounds a bit like hard work. Okay, cool. So I've set the scene. We got some figures. I've got some questions coming in from the audience, which is good. Before we do, I'm just going to recap on sort of some of the research that CIWM and I did from my presidential year and update it a little bit, because we're looking at a transition roadmap for the UK at the moment on how we decarbonise and what the circular economy looks like, which means we've had to revisit all of the forecasts around jobs. And so is it jobs, is it skills, is it competencies? We could get into that sort of educational piece if the audience so wish. But I think from my perspective, we're going to need lots of people handling lots of different materials in a better way than they've ever done before. And I don't care if you're working in India or China or the USA, you're going to be handling more material differently, segregated, better quality. That's a fundamental. You're going to have more people that are writing advanced policy and doing regulation like they've never done before, because you're regulating things that didn't exist 5 years ago, whether that be pyrolysis and gasification, or it be and sort of electricals, and it's all nanobots and God knows what. I mean, the opportunities are probably endless. And then I think it's there's a heap of people working in what I'm going to call hard science. So the chemists, the physicists, and the engineers who are going to be building stuff that treats materials, whether it be anaerobic digestion or whether it be, the advanced thermal conversion technologies, carbon capture storage, some fundamental building of stuff and then running it. And then I think in the middle of all that, I think you've got all the people that are into, you've mentioned it already, AI, data management, data capture, data appreciation, data understanding, all the stuff that actuaries and accountants might have done historically, now moving into a space where they're understanding the trends and the changing compositions perhaps of the materials that we handle. And then my favorite group, because Ian's already mentioned this group earlier, he said it's not only environmental and hard science, it's social scientists, people like me, because I've got a geography degree. I'm no hard scientist, and but I see myself as a behavioralist. So we've got to change the way that businesses and people act and believe. And I think, when you put that melting pot of skills together, you realize that our sector is going to probably treble in size in terms of manpower. And I think that means it doesn't matter how many people we reskill and upskill within our sector, there's a huge need for attractiveness and pull into our space. And yet neither of you went into waste management as a choice. It wasn't you're like, I woke up when you were 16 and went, happy days. I know I'm the odd one. I know I'm always the odd one in the room that went, I want to be in waste management. But I guess it was because I was a geographer that was looking for that human physical interface. And everybody was doing hydrology and climate change. So I thought, nobody's doing waste. And I blame my father. He was, 1 foot in the waste industry, never out. And so I'm still here. But I think there's so many questions in there about sector attractiveness. So go on in, as somebody that's running courses that are absolutely critical to, feeding my, my employment, kind of needs. Are you inundated? And are these people looking at our sector going, I want to be in that. That's a great place. It's exciting. It's changing. Even if they're going back to, their motherland, because I know a lot of your students historically have been international as well. Or actually, is it just one of those courses, people come, people go, but is there a passion there? I guess that's the question, passion and a career.
So we're not inundated with people wanting to do waste as a career. We are inundated with people who want to have their career connected to sustainability. And I think that we as a sector perhaps haven't connected waste and sustainability as clearly as we could have done. I mean, I've argued for a very long time that we shouldn't be calling wastes wastes. I've said for a very long time we should call them resources. And I'm pretty certain that if the CIWM changed its name to the Chartered Institution of Resource Management, we would see a very different demographic, and I think you would get better connectivity. I do think that the word waste is it sounds negative, doesn't it, Adam? Mm-hmm. It sounds negative, right? Whether it's a gas coming out of an exhaust pipe, whether it's wastewater spilling into a river, or whether it's litter blowing down the road. It just doesn't sound a very attractive proposition. But as you and I know from being in the sector for a very long time, there are incredible challenges which stretch your mind, stretch your skills. They're interesting, they're fun to do, and I think people don't think of waste as fun, but it's enormous fun to try and solve waste challenges. So I think there is definitely a perception issue, which, you as a social scientist and someone like Charlotte for the professional body, we need to work on that. That would be the way to change the situation from a trickle to being inundated.
I like that. So go on in, Charlotte, you can respond. Is a change of name, a game changer for resources and waste management, or is it a bigger issue than just a change of name?
Hey, I agree with you, and I feel like waste has got that dirty perception. You don't want to go into a sector where it's, it's not an attractive word, is it, waste? Like you say, it's got those negative connotations. But from my perspective, I don't know if resource is the best word, because perhaps not, I guess, having that experience within the sector, I probably wouldn't have known what it meant at school. Like, I think that's another issue, is that we want to encourage people to come in, and we need to make our sector more attractive. And I think that is definitely around the language we use. I don't think most people, it would be interesting to do a study in terms of what people recognise as the circular economy, because again, even after studying geography at university for 3 years, I did a physical degree, so maybe not as much human focus as might entail, but I just didn't know what circular economy meant really until I started my job. So I think it really is that language, and whether something like, I know it's not just recycling, and that's the wrong terminology to use when you look at the waste hierarchy, but something like that as I guess, part of the community or population, to me, I'd understand what that meant more than resource management, but I still don't think that's the right word. So I think we need to sort of find an in-between word that would appeal to people and make sense to people in what it means. But I definitely agree that we're more than just waste, and I think that's where that circular economy linkage comes. Is it just a refresh of how we look at that? And I agree again with Ian around I always use my brother, myself, as an example. We both wanted to go into something sustainable. He's quite proactive compared to me. And, you know, when he was at uni, he was looking at jobs and got very interested in the energy sector. And so now works in energy procurement. And that was kind of a traditional sustainability flow in, I guess. Whereas I was a bit more, not sure what I want to do, found this job, fell in. And it's just that difference, isn't it, of you go out targeting sustainability, you don't think of waste as that first point of call. So I definitely think that linkage between that. And I think, again, one of the facts you said, which I was shocked about, 44% of young people didn't know about climate change or the crisis or something like that was a fact you said, Adam. Yeah. Is it that education point at schools around that, and then what sectors you can go in to solve that perhaps first, rather than just changing the words or linking? I don't know. That was kind of what I was thinking.
I think you raised a really interesting point. Now I've spent much of the last decade, well, actually most of my career I've spent going into schools or taking schools around sites. That was my job in local government for 2 years, a long time ago. And I guess that really fascinated me, because it was like eyes open when they went to a MRF recycling centre and they saw materials and they were like, oh my God, this is our rubbish. So I think when you can connect people to the reality, suddenly I think and you can do that as a kid, I think you can completely open their eyes to the art of the possible. And then you start talking to them about career paths, and you start talking to them about the skill sets, because you could be an accountant or a marketer, or you can be, whatever, but those engineers or social scientists and beyond. But all of those skill sets are needed in sectors that are rapidly decarbonising. And I think, whether we call it sustainability, whether we call it resources, the whole theme for me is it's about not being carbon, and it's about, that kind of sense of purpose that's also got a career. It's not tree hugging, and it's not, eco warrior. People often say to me, oh God, you're banging your drum again. I'm like, no, I'm a professional. I work for a large company. I get paid a good salary. This is not about, campaigning and warrior stuff. This is about real industry making real change for real benefit, and that you can build a career around that. But number of times I go into schools though, and I don't know if you found this, Ian, when you're talking to your lot coming through into the university, but so many schools don't talk about our sector at all. They're still talking about being a dentist, a doctor, a banker. Who works in banks anymore? And I'm a bit worried that there's this disconnect between giving careers advice and talking about sectors because you remember it. And back in the 80s and 90s, maybe the world did learn it, but the waste industry is a very different place. Sorry, I could talk forever on this topic.
Well, yeah, and very knowledgeably too. And it's very interesting to hear everything that's been said so far. I noticed on the chat we've got a couple of academics. Actually, we've got Lucy from Edinburgh, we've got Ryan, who's been around the block like we have for a long time, I'd be interested to hear what they've got to say on this topic as well. So I go into schools a lot, like you do. About 7 or 8 years ago, I got really annoyed by the fact that environmental science was regarded as a dismal science. We are, Adam alluded to it in what he just said. He described people characterizing as a warrior or a tree hugger and so on. And in fact, what is wrong with wanting to have a cleaner environment, clean air, clean water, clean soil? What is wrong with wanting to have litter-free streets? What is wrong with wanting to take aluminium cans and turn them into more aluminium cans for a reduced cost and to provide employment, and so on? These are great careers, but what happens, I think, and I'd be really interested to hear what the rest of the panel think about this, is that science is seemed to be a cold subject, and a lot of people are put off from it. So 7 or 8 years ago, I said, sod it, I'm going to find a way to try and make science warm up. So I deliberately went out to work with creative artists. So I've worked with painters, I've worked with sculptors, I've worked with musicians, I've worked with poets. I'm currently got an artist in residence, and we do beatboxing in schools. We go in, we deliberately go into schools in very deprived areas or schools where the children have a lot of disadvantage, and they've never heard of the sector, they've never heard of wastes. And then when you go in and you start saying to them, well, what happens to your mobile phone at the end of its life? And they don't know. And then you say to them, well, how do we make sure that the pollutants in the mobile phone are not going into the water that you shower and drink in, or that those materials go back into the next mobile phone? And when you work with creative artists, what you get is this. So within 10 minutes of saying this to a group of 7 and 8-year-olds, they'd come up with a song. And the start of the song was, my old iPhone lying in the bin. His name is Bob and he's dribbling tin, right? And then they went on like that. Now, we produced an entire album of work, which we then
fantastic.
presented to 2 packed houses at the University of Southampton. And after the second performance, 2 grown men in their 60s and 70s came out in floods of tears. One of them said to me, I've worked in the waste sector for 40 years. He actually worked for one of your old companies, Adam, which I won't mention, okay? All right. Okay. And he said, I've always viewed waste as wastes, and I'd never thought of it the way that it's been presented back to me by using school children and creative artists to warm the subject up. And he was embarrassed and he was tearful about it. The children coming up with songs about how we could treat waste differently, and their young voices touched a nerve that raw science and statistics can't. So I think that the science and engineers and the sector, the hard-nosed commerce, would actually benefit by working a lot more with the creative sector. And I'm absolutely certain that that would bring more people with a wider range of skills into the sector, which is exactly what we need.
I love that approach. But the thought of you beatboxing, Ian, is probably enough to put me off my lunch.
Yeah, I get a professional to do that. And actually, I stand out of sight of the camera because you don't want to see me waggling my arse either, I can tell you that.
But I mean, I really like that. And it picks up a point. I mean, Ryan's made a point here about in the question, so thank you for Ryan. I mean, he's almost said, is this a marketing communication issue for our sector? And I think, Ian, you've kind of alluded to the fact it is, because you're getting exactly that kind of feedback. And there's so much good chat coming in about, oh, the kids are loving it, you know, when we go in and do schools talks. I don't think the kids are the problem at all. And I think everybody's saying that it's not the kids that are the problem, because you give them this ammunition, you give them the insight, you give them the, you know, the hands-on experience, and, you know, it opens up a, you know, more than just a can of worms. So Charlotte, if this is a branding, marketing, communication issue, what is CIWM going to do about this? Because I'm making you responsible.
Interestingly, we are trying to engage the early careers team that I sort of look after, I guess. We are trying to engage with schools, universities, school leavers a little bit more than we do already. So I think, as Ian sort of alluded to earlier, perhaps there was a bit more of a connect a couple of years back, and that's kind of not necessarily lost. We perhaps still have those relationships, but we're not utilising them as much as we can. So we've tried to do as many guest lectures, we're attending as many career fairs as we can. We're talking to our guests a bit more about the older, perhaps not such young kids, because I think we did a bit of a baseline exercise, and I can see in the chat as well quite a lot of people already do a lot in that. So we kind of felt maybe picking right at that point where people are leaving uni or leaving school and then looking for what career to go into, that's where we'd sort of take it. So that's one of the things we're doing. Another I guess key thing that the CIWM have done, which I found really useful, is their skills matrix. So it's a little bit different from what Ian was talking about, but it gives an opportunity for someone who's looking to come into the sector to have a look at what sort of skills would be needed for different types of jobs, which is really nice. So that's something that I'd also recommend having a look at. And then sort of my final, I guess, point would be, we need those sort of role models or case studies visible of how somebody has gone from a subject into like a level with progression, I think. So I guess as the early careers team, we've been trying to do that, but also from the presidential team. So yourself, Adam, when you were president, you know, people will have seen you with your background and your skill set and thought, okay, that could be me. And I know we've got David currently as president and Vicky's coming in. So there's lots of different skill sets and different backgrounds from across the sector. So I think that's crucial, and just seeing that there is someone like you in that position as well. So yeah, that would be a big drive, I think, for that communications, campaign, marketing side of things for CIWM, not just CIWM though, for all businesses, I think, or organisations or local authorities or universities, however and whoever it's coming from.
Thank you. So that's a really interesting thoughts there. I want to take this beyond the UK boundaries a little bit and think about, you know, how much of this stuff is accessible if you're in India or Africa or Latin America, let's say. You know, can they get involved in some of the courses that we're putting on? Is there enough free content out there? How do we help, you know, build a plethora of circular economy specialists who are going to drive this transition on every continent if we can't do it easily in the UK? Ian, what's the, is it a networking issue? Is it content? Is it free? Where do we go?
Well, look, I think that this sort of event that's been put on today is a big help, right? This is a new type of approach using kind of live podcasts or whatever you call them. And we've got people from all around the world who are joining us. And I think this is a really good innovation. And we you know, more of this, I think, would be great. Young people don't watch television anymore, right? They watch streaming services. Young people spend, you know, some of my master's students spend as much as 13 hours a day on their mobile phones. I'll say that again, 13 hours a day on their mobile phones. And I ask them what they're doing, and they're watching Instagram, TikTok, and so on. That is how we reach young people and get them into the sector, is that we use the media that they use. And that is a global thing. That is not just about the UK. That's not just about Europe or the developed parts of the world. So that's one thing. The second thing is that you alluded to this right at the beginning. I mean, people who don't know Adam won't realise that he actually started off in a local authority, and he didn't start off in any old local authority. He started off in Kensington and Chelsea, didn't you? Right? Which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with Britain's geography, that's the poshest bit of London, right? And he, Adam made a difference. And the reason Adam made a difference is that he found a way of popularizing waste management through his research. You know, his early research papers used popular TV characters such as the Wombles, didn't they? Right?
They did.
All right, that then attracts young people. But to attract the skilled people that we need, the salaries have got to be there. Right, so there's a salary issue as well. So it's attractiveness, it's excitement, it's fun, it's salaries, and it's the breadth of people that we need. And again, you know, we've heard people like Charlotte and Adam highlight this. You know, we do need accountants, we need computer programmers. We need, so I've got a project at the moment where we're trying to recruit somebody who will connect AI and robotics. Why? Because we can use AI and robots put together to help sort waste, construction waste, and that sort of thing. Okay, and that's a great solution. And I know a number of companies, waste management companies, are starting to dabble with connecting these things up. Most people wouldn't even think that we would use AI and robotics combined in the waste resource sector. So there are loads of things that we could do. We're just not very good at putting them out there at the moment. So communication to a global audience through the channels that the global audience uses is our starting point.
Okay, thank you. Right, some more questions coming in. I'm going to give Lucy a shout out here. Thank you, Lucy. Picking up on Charlotte's point, question about visible career paths and maybe mentorships. So, you know, is some of this about giving people confidence that they've got something to offer and that they've got a place in this really rapidly changing sector? They're going to make a difference. Is that part of the missing piece? Because certainly my experience with both ISWA and CIWM is the more mentoring I can do, the more you're providing people with almost a fast track that the sector's real, they can play, and you can open a door or two, and they can, you know, they've got something to offer. I worry I can't touch, you know, like, you know, millions of people. So we need lots of mentoring, but is that part of the solution?
Jump in here, I think, Adam. I I definitely agree. It's that giving the confidence, or almost handing that baton on, that someone like myself, who I used to watch webinars with you on all the time, think of you as like a waste celebrity. The fact I'm now sat with you doing a webinar is a bit ridiculous, really, in my head. But having the early careers team, or becoming a mentee, being mentored by someone like yourselves. I think Vicky, my mentor, is actually on the webinar. I think I saw her drop a message in the chat. But having that link with someone who's quite high up and has that experience or has that network was massive for me. And just having that connectivity, I guess. So I think something like that. And this webinar is a great example where people are interacting, you know, through that chat. There's already been a few people that I've seen, right? I might reach out to them afterwards just to see what's going on. Oh, we've lost Ian. But yeah, I think that is a massive part in building that sort of connectivity side of things. But I think also things like through the early careers team at CIWM, and I've seen it at Beyondly as well, where I work, we have sort of observer roles on some key committees, or, you know, senior management team. We're allowed to sit in and see what goes on. Everything's very transparent, and I think things like that have really helped to build our confidence in contributing. And just because I've been in the sector 4 years, okay, I might not have as much technical knowledge as somebody, but some of my other thoughts and ideas doesn't mean it's not, you know, respectable or not a good idea. Sometimes it's a good fresh perspective, and I found that with CIWM in terms of just asking, oh, so why do we do this, you know, like, because I was a new member and didn't really understand the behinds of it. So I think having those smaller, maybe accessible parts to groups or committees or whatever it might be has also been incredibly beneficial. And I think that helps to sort of keep people in the sector as well, like you said, almost like a fast track in. And then once you're in and you know those people, you're kind of going to carry on and continue to build that rapidly.
Very good, thank you, and thank you for the celebrity shout out. It's it just makes me feel really old. Oh, Ian's back. So another question that's come in, and yeah, let's go with this one, because I think this is really interesting. It's about giving tips to someone who's not new to the job market, and I guess, you know, we all know people that are kind of thinking about transitioning. How can they get the key kind of skills they need? So let's go with Ian first. I've got some opinions on this, but maybe they're not the skills they're using in their current job. So they've got a passion, they want to transfer over to the circular economy. How do they start topping up their skills and capabilities without leaving employment? There you go, Ian. Tough question for you.
Yeah, sorry, my internet suddenly went, and so I dropped out. My apologies. Yeah, that is an interesting question. So I think you're quite right, Adam. I do think that the waste sector has traditionally attracted people who are a little bit older, who have realised as they get older that the sector is more attractive than they realised. And what they've done is they've seen the wider range of possibilities. I think that the sort of things that used to happen that maybe happen less now, probably because of health and safety concerns, is site visits. I think every single person should be in the whole world should walk on a dump site or a landfill site once in their life, because it is a shock to the system, right? Then I think every single person should go to a wastewater treatment plant, because again, it is, whoa, it blows your mind. When you suddenly realize that 3% of the UK's electricity is used to pump oxygen through secondary wastewater just to oxidize it, you go, what? Is that real? It is real, absolutely. That's the scale of the industry. And then when you go to a materials recycling plant and you see how things are separated out, and then you follow the chain of bound up plastics to its next process and this next process and this next process, suddenly you go, okay, this is not what I thought it was. This is completely, it's a much higher scale job. And so I think that people with existing skills in organization, management, planning, finance, logistics, computerization, and so on, once they realize that it's not just about the bin man taking it away and sticking it in a hole in the ground or setting a match to it and setting it on fire, then they go, wow, okay, I can see why I would like to work in that sector. So maybe a little bit more transparency and openness about what we actually do downstream after the materials are collected might enable people to go, my skills could fit into that. Whereas the lack of transparency at the moment might be putting people off.
That's a really fair challenge, and certainly we have an open door policy. There's open houses, aren't there? And suddenly there's a week of them here, there, and everywhere. Many of our sites, and I know Veolia do the same, so I'm sure we're not unique. But the rest of the year, if somebody emails me and says I'd love to come and look at your recycling plant or reuse centre or something, I'll try and make it happen, because why wouldn't I? I think if I can convince one person that the world's very different, then they're going to tell their mates and their parents and their siblings, and that ripple effect starts, doesn't it? So I'm with you, Ian. Let's open the doors as much as possible.
But can you put it on TikTok though? Can you put it on TikTok?
Yeah, we've got those videos. They're on my website. That's a good point. They're on my website. You can see it, virtually. Certainly.
So we maybe, if you go back 50 years, we had the Keep Britain Tidy group, and what they did is they connected with celebrities. They connected with ABBA. They connected with Morecambe and Wise, and so on. Right? Why? Maybe one way to is to connect with celebrities with the greatest respect, a wider diaspora on TikTok than Adam Reid, or Ian.
I was going to say, they're real celebrities, by the way, ABBA. That's a whole different game.
But you know what I mean, Adam, right? I think it's about visibility,
It's a good challenge. It's a good challenge. And Charlotte, I guess, as a more recent school leaver than either Ian and I, you didn't go to the local tip for a day out. You didn't go around a recycling centre just to see the art of the possible. No, I see that you're right. See, we should be putting this on every school curricular, a day trip out to go and see the art of the possible. So why not? Right, now listen, there's some great commentary coming, so thank you everybody for the chat. I'm loving all of these references to great books that you should go and read. The Secret Life of Rubbish, to go and inspire yourself. My favourite one at the moment, I'm going to give him a shout out, because I was at a conference only a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Matt Winning he's a stand-up comedian who's done Edinburgh Fringe and all the rest of it. He's currently on stage in Soho on a Friday and Saturday night, but he's written a book called Hot Mess. What on earth can we do about climate change? This has got to be the funniest book about catastrophe I've ever read, and it makes it more accessible to my 13-year-old, because he doesn't want to read GCSE climate change. He's not interested in A-level, the end of the world is nigh. What he wants is, I can have a laugh. Oh my God, I didn't know the ice caps were melting, or whatever it might be. And he's talking about it in a really, I would say this is quite a youthful kind of cultural language. And there you go. There's my top tip. I'm literally halfway through it, and it's making me laugh a lot. But also, Andy Reese, thank you for the shout out, mate, because there's nothing better than a career podcast. Great link in the chat there. Rubbish Talk. It's a good name for a podcast if I've ever heard one. But you're right. Both Andy and I are on there talking about our earlier careers and how we ended up where we did, which was a lot of really bad decisions. Take it or leave it. Good feedback there on the Sardinia Symposium as well. So fantastic. And Sweater's put the link in to my press release where you can get the data that I started this session with. So lots of good stuff there. Right. Here we go. Anonymous attendee. Here we go. Sector attractiveness and the right language. This is interesting. I'm going to read that in a minute. I'm conscious we're good on time at the moment. If you were a betting person, Charlotte, and this is just to buy me time while I'm reading the long question over there. If you're a betting person, what 2 skills would you suggest that people go out, or what 2 competencies should people go and spend some time on? So this, these people that are thinking about transitioning in and need to get some. What would you be putting your money on? What could they be doing a night class in, or they could be reading, watching YouTube videos on, so they're ready when that big opportunity comes around? Ian, you got the same question next.
Right, for me and my experience coming into the sector, I think the first one for me is just how a business works, business model innovation, that type of thing. So it's all well being me as a consultant suggesting solutions to a business to make their, I guess, I don't, whether it's their product or a service they offer, more sustainable or more circular, but actually understanding the impact of cost and things like that is really critical to then sell it to a senior management team, because more often than not, circular thinking is going to require a whole shift in how they do their business. So that's one thing which I think, I had jobs before uni, you know, like the summer job, working in a restaurant, that kind of thing, but I think I didn't really have a proper understanding of like business workings and how that is. So for somebody coming into the sector, maybe from an early careers perspective, that's definitely one I would recommend. And then the second one, again, for me, is definitely data and analytics and that kind of stuff, which is, it sounds simple enough, but there's so many free YouTube videos, courses out there to do it. Even ChatGPT can help when you ask it a question on how this Excel formula works. But without data, we can't baseline, we can't measure any of our progress or anything like that. So I think I've just found it as like it might not be a necessity to my day job, but it's like a beneficial add-on to whatever you're doing, whether you're in behaviour change, I don't know, IT, anything like that. Those skills are going to be critical. And I think, again, it was back to this HR conference I attended. I couldn't believe, I think in the UK specifically, it was something like 40% of adults in the workforce didn't have the required data or IT skills for jobs that are existing, which I couldn't believe. So I think, yeah, those would be my two. Business sort of model innovation and thinking, and then also data and analytics.
Good challenge. And Ian?
Well, I think that the way our education systems are set up, and it's not just true of the United Kingdom, it's true around the world, are wrong. Okay. So if you look at the Republic of Ireland, for example, it organizes its post-15 education completely differently to what we see in the United Kingdom. And it's very common for 16 and 17-year-olds to actually have many months to go and do a work placement.
Yeah.
And they come back different people. And
Totally.
it's Charlotte's first point about not knowing about how business operates and the skills involved and the general act of being a professional as a young person.
Yeah.
It means that when they, you know, and if they keep going through the similar sort of system at higher education level, they're not ready, even at the age of 22, 23, to go into a business. And it's a constant criticism of the business sector of universities, but it actually starts earlier than that. You know, we have this metrics-based education system which does not value soft skills, does not value personal skills, does not value business skills, does not value just being able to problem solve in the moment, which is what you have to do as a barmaid, for example, Charlotte, right? And so on. That is what we need to address for, you know, training. There is an upturning of our education system to make it fit for purpose. Yeah, Saoirse's just, you know, said in the you know, my wife is Irish. I've got 22 Irish nephews and nieces, Saoirse, right? We've all been through the Irish transition system, and I can tell you the difference it makes to them as a person, let alone their wider employability skills, is colossal. So, you know, to the people listening around the world, push for your education systems to have a strong element of employability in it, a work placement. The benefits will be not just huge for the individual, but for society as a whole.
Yeah, large. I think it's a really good challenge. And interestingly, I have an intern every year in my sustainability team because we've designed my team with that spot in it. So I've done the business planning to enable us to every year have somebody that can rotate. The things they learn, honestly, they say to me afterwards, I had no idea. I didn't know I could. I wish I'd known this before. And now they've gone off and they've, you know, either they've gone back to finish their final year at university or they've gone straight into another job somewhere and, you know, they're flying. And yeah, I think the more that businesses can help do that and the more individuals, the advice I would give to somebody that, you know, is looking to get some of those skills, go and do some of this, you know, even if you've got to do some volunteering, you know, to get that on your CV so that you can then showcase your other skills. Because I'm looking for people that have got experience and have got, other skills that aren't purely about waste management, whatever that is. But half the battle is being able to get in front of the right person to showcase that. And so I would say, I'm going to give a top tip now because we're rolling into the last 5 minutes. One of my top tips about getting on in the circular economy is connectivity. And come and meet us, come and see us, come and impress us. There's so many events that are free to attend that if you were to rock up and you were to have a cup of coffee with me or Ian or Charlotte and talk about stuff, I'd remember you. And then when that job opportunity comes up, you don't have to send a CV in and get in a big long list with thousands of other people. You can drop me an email because we've already started chatting, haven't we? Surely that's how the world goes round. It's who you know and how you access them. So I like proactive people. I like people that have got passion and want to demonstrate it. So, if you can do that, make it happen. What's your top tip, Charlotte? What are you going to tell people they should be doing to get on in this new transition world?
I think join a professional body, whether it's CIWM, whether it's the Circular Economies Institute, whether it's ISWA. Just get yourself out there and do a bit more than what you're doing already, which I think is kind of what you've just said, Adam. But they're almost like a pre-designed blueprint of how you can progress your skills, meet people, network, build a community. So I think for me, in the last 2 years, that is really what's driven me on. And I think when I step down from early careers president, I won't stop there. I'm looking to join my local regional committee. I'm going to try and be as involved as I can in schools and that kind of thing, but just to keep going, because I think there's so much to do. We've talked nearly for an hour about how, what we can do to do it. So let's get out there and do it. So I think, just get as involved as you can within anything. Whether that's an institution or volunteering or anything like that. And it really does help your career alongside that as well.
I think it shows you the things you like. It shows you what you don't like. It introduces you to people who might then be really important 5 years, 10 years down the line. The benefits are enormous. And for the employer, by the way, I love the new, I love the challenge. Why are you doing that? Why does it work like that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Great. Because I'm a bit long in the tooth now. Maybe the ways I do things are not right. I'm more so I think it's really just get on. Ian, what's your key message? What do you want people to go and do next?
I think that everybody at maybe every couple of years in their life should ask their work colleagues or their friends and family to do a kind of 360 degree evaluation of them and just say, look, what am I good at? What am I not good at? Where do I irritate you? Right? Where do I support you? And then jot it all down. Now, the feedback that you get, some of it will not be right? Some of it will be a bit too personal and maybe a little bit offbeat. But there will be some great stuff in there that you can reflect on. And everybody can do that, whether you're a 13-year-old or a 99-year-old like David Attenborough. Okay, and I think that kind of willingness to be self-reflective about the skills that you've got will give you confidence about the skills you've got so that you can go on and use them better. But the skills that you don't have that you could get also helps as well. So a 360-degree evaluation every couple of years by your friends, family, and work colleagues, and take it seriously. Don't get offended by it. View it as constructive criticism, and I think it would be brilliant if we all did that. And you can start with me. So if anybody wants to send me a reflection email me at idw@sutton.ac.uk. All comments gratefully received, and I promise I'll act on them.
There you go. What more could we ask for? I got to be honest, we do 360 reviews for the senior management at Suez, and I had to grow a tough hide because sometimes it can be a bit raw, but it's really important because these are the people that you're working with, or in your case, interacting with. So very good advice. Right, listen, audience, you've asked some great questions. Hopefully we've answered as many as we could. There's one here from Sorter about the Department for Education and the Department for Environment joining up to a degree, but nowhere near good enough. And CIWM and others like Suez are pushing that hard to try and get the right education materials into the curricula, because that's how you're going to get kids taught the right things, is make it curricular. then you could do site visits. Then all the online video content becomes valid because they've got a lesson or three where they got to talk resources or circular or whatever. So yeah, really interesting question. Thank you for posting. Shweta, I think we're almost done, but one final word. At the end of all my webinars, I have a heavily used t-shirt. It's got room just for a hashtag and a quick message. Charlotte, what is my hashtag takeaway message from today?
I think hashtag we're not just bins. We're receptive for everyone. Yeah, I think would be my takeaway.
I'm gonna get that one sorted. Hashtag I'm no bin man. Ian, what's yours?
Hashtag opportunity knocks.
Oh, now we're cooking. Good. That's a good 70s program, showing your age. And mine would be hashtag circular opportunities. Grab them now. Boom. Yes, thank you very much, everybody. I've been Dr. Adam Reed. I am the Chief Sustainability Officer at Suez. Shweta, thank you for letting us be here today.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Ian. Thanks to the attendees. A reminder to you all that the webinar will be up on our website in 2 weeks. And sign up to our newsletter. You will get an update. All right. Bye, folks.
Take care.